Hey everyone, Madilynn Dale here, the chapter goddess. I am a mom, author, blogger, freelancer, podcaster, producer, and overall creative. With this show, I really want to focus on creatives and bring their authentic self to life. How are they motivated to pursue their passions? What have been the struggles along the way? Does self-care play an important role in who they are today and how they connect with the creative flow? Bringing one's authentic self to the forefront is important in this world that we live in currently. Sharing your self-care, your tips, and how you stay on track for things without losing it completely is also important. Self-care is not talked about enough, and authenticity and self-care are what I like to highlight with my creatives, as well as getting to know them. So get ready for a fun and entertaining show. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get ready to meet this episode's guest. Today's episode is sponsored by Creative Edge Publicity. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Chapter Goddess Chat. I have a fantastic guest for you guys to meet today. I've been privileged enough to be on a show with her with Go Indie Now, so I'm stoked that she is on my own podcast and interview channel. But without further ado, let me bring her in and let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her work.
Hi, everyone. So my name is JP McLean. Now, I wasn't always JP. I was Joanne, and I still am to a lot of people. But Joanne is spelt many different ways. Jo- is my name. And therefore, I thought it would just be a little more easy if I used JP. So far, it's working out. So I've been writing for 12 years now, and in those 12 years, I have written 9 full-length books. I've got another one in draft form in 2 different series. I have a novella and several short stories, and all of those stories are written in a supernatural or urban fantasy genre, because I just love magic and anything magical. I write full-time. I live on a little wee island off the west coast of Canada in British Columbia, and I write full time. And I like gardening. Mostly the weeds like my garden, and I have to get rid of them. And I call myself a lapsed gardener, and I enjoy cooking. I love cooking when I've got the time, and I also enjoy scuba diving, but only in warm water because I'm a real wuss for cold temperatures. And that's me, kind of in a nutshell.
Oh, yeah. I don't blame you on the whole preference for warm water. Anything cold is not my cup of tea. Like, I'll do it, not the water part. If the water's cold, I really don't want to get in. But let's dive in and talk about your latest release, the Ghost Mark from the Dark Dream series. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the Dark Dream series starts with Blood Mark, and Ghost Mark carries on where Blood Mark leaves off. And this is Blood Mark.
Ooh.
And Ghost Mark is, I'll show you the cover, is that one. And so we learn the protagonist is a woman named Jane Walker, and she is born with this snaking blood red birthmark around her. And in the first book, we learned that is not actually a blood mark, a birthmark. It's a blood mark, and it was given to her in an Inca ritual, and it protects her. And so in Ghost Mark, it continues, and her blood marks at the end of the very first book, she's not sure if those blood marks are protecting her anymore. It's set on the west coast of Canada, which all my books are set on the west coast of Canada. And we learn that it's a psychopathic killer who was after her in book 1. In book 2, the psychopathic killer is in jail, but other people start coming to the forefront that are threatening her. And in the Inca ritual that gave her the marks to protect her, help her when she's dreaming. When she dreams of the past. Continuing on, in Ghostmark, Jane is setting out to fix something that she broke in the first book. And when she broke it, what I mean by that is she has these debilitating dreams where she's frozen in her sleep. And during those dreams, she's actually slipping into the past. And she used to slip into the past as just a ghost or fly on the wall. But at the end of the first book, she started slipping into the past as a fully formed person, and she broke something. And so she's trying to fix that mistake in Ghostmark. And she doesn't know if the marks are protecting her. She knows she ruined one life, at least one life, with the mistake she made. And so she's been searching for the only person who might have actually benefited from the mistake that she made. When she finds him, she finds out that he is actually a seasoned killer in a drug gang. So she's devastated. And then she learns he's coming after her boyfriend, the only man she's ever loved. He's coming after her. And so she is trying to warn her boyfriend. That's the big scene. She needs to warn him. But then she falls into another one of these debilitating dreams, and this dream won't let her go.
Oh, man, that's terrifying. Like, I mean, obviously she's going to eventually get out, right? But, where did the inspiration for this come from?
Well, the second book's inspiration is kind of vague. It just builds on the first one. All the potential. As you're writing the first one, I keep little notes. But the first one, the whole series, the whole idea of this mark around her came from an NBC series opener for a series called Blind Spot.
Yeah.
And Jamie Alexander was the actress in that. And you know that first scene is New York Times Square at night. It's been cleared of people. There's a duffel bag that's been dropped, and a bomb tech is approaching the duffel bag, and he's got the mask on and the big puffy thing. And as he approaches the bag, it starts to unzip from inside, and Jamie Alexander pops out, and she's covered in tattoos from the neck down, and she doesn't know who she is or why she has these marks, or who gave them to her. And so I thought it would be so interesting to write a book from the perspective of that person who has marks that weren't of their choosing. And how does that impact them from birth if they grow up like that? What kind of a person are they? And then I got into I wanted it to be an Inca ritual. I wanted them to be a good thing in the end, that they help her. So that's how that started.
So that sparks the curious question of what her parents were like. Who were they, and how did they play a role in that?
Well, that's key in this book, because she's an orphan, so I don't want to spoil too much. She was abandoned at birth. No, that's okay. She was abandoned at birth, and so when she learns that these are blood marks, the people who are experts in Inca mythology, they think that they had to have come from her parents. But she doesn't believe that they could possibly have come from her parents, because she was abandoned hours after she was born. So why would they do that to her? Why would they, want to protect her if they don't even know who she is or what she's capable of? So that gets solved in the first book. We learn all about that in the first book.
Man, that's heartbreaking and traumatic. How does that affect how she handles situations as an adult?
Oh, really? It's fantastic, because she grows up. This is where you can kind of make the childhood that will motivate the future actions. So she grows up in the system. She's adopted out when she's very young, and those parents die in a tragic house fire. And then I know, I had to give her everything.
Yeah.
You know what they say about you chase your characters up a tree and throw rocks at them?
Oh, well, I mean,
it's a lot of rocks
for good characters.
So she ends up growing up in the system. And I had interviewed a social worker to just get a sense of it. And he said, it's a terrible phenomenon, but I guess it's true that a lot of times these foster kids, all they have is a green garbage bag full of their things that they carry from home to home, especially if they're troublesome children. They have to leave right away, or somebody else in the home is troublesome. So that's her. She's a troublesome kid and gets in trouble. and she's suffering from these marks, the kids making fun of her. So that builds her character in a certain way as she becomes an adult. And she meets her best friend in care. And so her and another 13-year-old named Sadie grow up in the system together, and they go out onto the streets, and they live on the streets for a little while. And then they go into the seediest part of the downtown and live there for a little while. So the best friend is a prostitute on the side when she needs extra money. And there's no judgment, because that's life when you're living on the streets. And so it makes for a very interesting scenario. So much, it's so rich. There's so much you can draw from for the story. So there's lots in there about bar scenes and downtown East Side. And she rides a motorcycle because when she has the marks, the visors, the full frontal visors, you can't see who she is. You can't see her marks. So she feels like she's free when she's on a bike because no one knows who she is. So just tons of interesting little tidbits that you can throw in based on the upbringing that I've given her, which is no parents, doesn't know why she has these marks, has these debilitating dreams, and has this kick-ass best friend, Sadie, that's just a riot. She's so funny.
Yeah. So how does the paranormal world come into play for her? Does she know it? Like, does she have an idea that it exists early on, or is she just like hit with it full force?
She kind of knows it exists because she's been having these dreams since she was about, 10 or 11 years old. So she knows that she's dreaming of things that really happened because she, as a child, confronts the kids that she's dreamed about and tries to offer them sympathy or tries to help them. And you can imagine what it must feel like if you're, a young boy and your dad's beating you. You don't necessarily want to admit to that. So if some girl comes up and says, can I help you with this? She gets shunned and pushed into puddles and such. So she knows that they're true. She knows these things happened. She doesn't know how to deal with it. But when she meets Sadie, she all of a sudden has a friend who supports her and backs her up and understands. And she's the first one she tells about these dreams. So she grows up knowing that part of it. The rest of it comes as she approaches her 25th birthday. And the 25th birthday is a key date in her life for the Inca ritual that gave her the mark. So as she approaches that date, her dreams are changing and she is becoming more present in the dreams. And so she knows that the supernatural exists in that she is slipping back in time, not way back in time, just like to her childhood. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the time frame that I keep it within, just to make it a little bit simpler. And so as it goes along, it's going to get more and more complicated. A lot of people have called my books fantasy light or supernatural light. So if you are new to the genre and you don't know if it's something that you might enjoy, this series and the series before it are a real good introduction because it doesn't hit you over the head with fantasy. It's just kind of worms its way into the story.
Yeah. It's like a gradual introduction kind of. That's awesome. It is a great way to get people into that genre. Another thing I'm curious about is the Inca background you've got going on here. What kind of pulled you toward using that in the story?
I needed to find lore or a really rich historical place from which to draw these marks, because they couldn't just be ordinary birthmarks or tattoos. They had to have a ritualistic meaning. So I just, researched rituals and came across some offering bowls. The offering bowls are in my book, and they are a real thing that happened back in Inca days. And people would put something of value into the bowl and make an offering to the gods. And it would be for, better crops or whatever. So her marks are as a result of a sacrifice that somebody has made on her behalf to protect her. So I just had to find that little bit of real world to attach to the marks so that it gave them a little more heft. And I find that with all the books that I write, I try to put as much real life things in it as possible. Like I set them in present day Vancouver. I name restaurants, I name streets. I want people to feel super grounded so that when the supernatural elements happen, they can believe them or suspend their disbelief, because the rest of it is so real. And so the Inca ritual stuff is real. If you go online, you will find all the stuff that I talk about is actually real. I've just applied it in a imaginative way.
Yeah. And that is so fun to do, especially because it's an urban fantasy type novel. That's like just, it's perfect fit for that. Putting it in the real world, and people are going to question, is this really a thing? Like, if I go to this spot, is something like, did something really happen here related to this? Like, it makes a lot of people question, like, what is real and what's not real for those. And it's just a lot of fun, because it's also, I find it easier to escape into the story because it's so realistic. When it comes to her character, did you draw inspiration, like for her body image and looks and stuff, from the aforementioned show? Or
no. I mean, I guess they both have dark hair, but no, I didn't draw that comparison. Her physicality is in many ways the opposite of the main character in the first series, and I did that on purpose because when I was doing the first series. It was the first serious writing that I had done, and I took a few of my own characteristics and put them into that character because it made it easier to write the character when I knew so many things about her height and all that stuff. So in the new book, I made it so that I was not familiar. I made it a challenge. So she's not like the first character at all. She's like, the first character comes from an affluent family, very naive in many ways. This character, of course, is the opposite. She's like bottom of the barrel for money. She has no money. She has no skills. She barely scraped through high school, lives in a really rough part of town. So the differences were important to me to make. I just did not want to make the mistake of using the same character, only with a different hair color kind of thing in the second series.
Yeah. Man, she's fascinating, and she seems like a tough, like spitfire, just from what you've explained of her.
Yeah, well, she had to be, right? That's the whole point of the backstory is, it has to motivate the actions going forward. So yeah, she was definitely motivated.
Yes. Does she get a chance to kind of come out of that survival mode that she's kind of been stuck in?
She will. She's not out of it yet because she is still traveling into the past in her narcoleptic state where she can't control. Mm-hmm. And so that continues into the third book, which is finished. It'll have to go through an editing process. I have finished it though, but I'm letting it steep for a couple of weeks before I get back into it. But yeah, she will in the end, yes, come more into that. But it's always going to be a problem because this is not going away for her. So she will always have unknown things. She'll always be in danger and putting herself in danger and having to be very careful all the time.
Ooh, yes. You mentioned that book 3 is getting ready to go into the editing process. What does your process from start to end look like with creating a book?
Okay. Well, I'm the very first book I did, Secret Sky, that was total pants, completely pantsed. I started with a scene and I built outwards and then I rewrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it. I've gotten a little smarter now. Neither method is, something you must do, but I know myself a bit better now. Yeah. So now I know that I need me only. Other people know, but I need an outline. I need to know where it starts, where it ends, and I need to know a couple of scenes in between. And interestingly enough, that gets me through most of the books that I write. Mm-hmm. But these books, the Mark books, Blood Mark, Ghost Mark, and the new one, are considerably different in that the first book was told from one character's first-person perspective. Yeah. The new books, the 3 Mark books, are written from 3 characters' third-person perspective. So there's 3 stories, and they're all twisted together. So there's Jane, the main character that goes through all of it. There is her sidekick or her roommate, Sadie. And then the third voice is different in each book. And so I thought I had a good enough outline, but as I started writing it, it happened with all of the books. Mm-hmm. I realized that it wasn't enough. I needed more.
Yeah.
So, these ones have been really hard, much more difficult to write. But so after I get the outline, I start writing it chronologically usually. If I run into a roadblock, I can write another scene further along if I want. Or in this new book, I just change characters. So instead of writing a Sadie scene, I'll write a Jane scene or one of the other scenes. And then that process usually takes about 6 to 8 months, depending on how hard it is. And then I set it aside, let it steep for a little while. Well, first of all, I have a glass of champagne. Super important.
Celebrate. Yeah.
Super important. And then after it sits, I'll go back over it with fine-tooth comb. Mm-hmm. And I'm not looking for all the little teeny weeny errors. I'm looking for things like scenes where I've got a lot of dialogue and not enough setting and not enough description. Scenes where I've got too much description and I need to throw some dialogue in to break it up. That kind of thing. And I make sure I haven't lost any threads. Like I already know, just as it's steeping, I've lost a thread that I'm going to have to write into the end, or else get rid of the teaser, So that's my edit process. And then it goes to, I've got a couple of different beta readers that are good at different things. So then it goes off to beta readers who are like the big picture beta readers. And they'll send it back with comments on a scene maybe that wasn't working for them, choreography that maybe wasn't working, timing that's off, that kind of thing. So I fix that stuff up. And then it goes off to a structural editor because I still need structural edits. I just get so much from them. And then I incorporate all that stuff and then more beta readers. And then I incorporate that stuff. And then it goes off to a copy editor. And copy editor, I love copy editors. They find stuff that, you use the word play twice in one sentence. Yeah, I don't know how they find all that stuff. And then after the copy editor, it gets formatted and then proofread. And then after the proofread, it gets formatted and out into the world for their yay or nay.
Yeah, the process is always it's a long process, but the end result is 100% worth it. And that glass of champagne, do you have it again at the very end, when it's actually publishing time?
Oh my goodness, yes. I learned that from this group called the Creative Academy, and this one woman, Crystal Hunt. She has champagne every time, every little win. So if it's a really tough scene or a really emotional scene, it's have a glass of champagne. And I have just, since I've been doing that, I've been finding that I don't know, it makes the process so much more enjoyable to know that you can celebrate. You don't have to wait till it gets published to celebrate. You can celebrate, all the different milestones along the way.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great, kind of successful loop to keep yourself in because it keeps you motivated in a way.
Yeah,
rewarding yourself for doing all the difficult things and staying with it.
Yeah.
Do you have other ways that you celebrate those wins?
I like, other than the champagne, I usually take some time off, even if it's just a day or two, and do something different. I have so many hobbies that I don't get to because writing, especially when I'm in the heat of it, takes up all of my time. I find it really hard to stop writing creatively when I'm in the zone. So when I do find time, I have to force myself to get up and go out for a walk. Try to do that daily. But usually champagne or a cup of tea or a walk or a lunch or dinner. I'm going to Vancouver for a couple of days sometime this month. So that's going to be fun. I'm actually doing a really interesting, it's a book trip, but it's downtown Vancouver at the law courts. And I'm going because anyone can go to criminal trials. And there's a very big legal scene in this book that's currently drafted. And so I'm going to go and stay in a hotel for a couple of days, and I have a couple of girlfriends coming with me. One of them is a Crown prosecutor. So I'm going to go in and sit down and get the firsthand, what does it smell like? What does it feel like?
Courtroom.
All.
So like, they're musty. So at least the ones I've been into, I had jury duty. So like, I got the experience.
That's like, are you sure it was jury duty?
Yes. So I got it in the mail and I was like, no.
I tried to. I was called for jury duty a couple years ago, and they rejected me. I don't want to go.
I will say, when I had it, it was a cool experience. I was really hoping not to get picked because at the time I was still working as a physical therapy assistant. And of course, I get stuck on a malpractice case. And I was like, no, there's no way they're going to let me out of this one. Then maybe they will. Nope. I was just like, okay. It ended up going for almost 2 weeks. It was just like, this is killing me.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Criminal cases, I bet those are interesting. So
yeah. Well, I've learned so much already just doing the research because are you in Canada as well?
I'm in Oklahoma, so it's a weird.
Okay.
Yeah.
So most of our TV is American.
Oh.
So, we're used to seeing on TV the way a courtroom looks in an American court. So you've got the judge behind the bench and they've got a gavel and you've got the two tables. That you don't have that in Canada.
Really?
You've got a judge, no gavel. And the defense and crown are at a table right up against the judge.
Man.
Right up against the judge. So the defendants are sitting in a box over here. Their lawyers are at the front of the room. And so it's completely different. And so you have to kind of explain. I do like to be true to the location. So I do put in things to get the point across without hitting people over the head, but I can't make it an American court when it's happening in Vancouver. So, as much as I'd like to describe the table and, the people that are sitting right at the table, that's not how it happens here.
Yeah.
There's no gavel. How can there not be a gavel?
You're going to get that research in there and have a little trip out of it.
Yeah. I can't wait. That's going to be such fun.
Oh yeah. And you'll get to pick your friend's brain too while you're there the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And then dinner's out. Like where I live on a little wee island. It's a farming community. There's 1,400 people, I think is the new census, or maybe it's 1,600. I can't remember now. Mm-hmm. I think it's 1,400. So it's really small. We're ferry bound. And the places to eat out there's 2 places you can eat lunch. They're not all open. They're not both open every single day. Sometimes there's dinner at one of the restaurants, not all the time, not often. So going out for meals is one of my favorite things to do when I get off island.
Yeah.
Dinners and lunches. Here I come.
Yes, man. It's because you're kind of deprived there. But I also get the small island living is probably a little bit more peaceful too.
It's very peaceful. But we do have a bookstore. We have a bookstore.
There you go.
Necessities, right?
Yes. Your place has their priorities right. Yes.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. I'm curious too, though, what other research have you had the chance to do for this series?
Oh my goodness. It's you would think that being a fantasy novel, you wouldn't need that much research, but you'd be so surprised. You write fantasy as well?
Yeah, urban paranormal fantasy as well. So I totally get you. I'm like,
yeah. Oh yeah. You have to. I in the other series, I drove down the coast to California, and because I was setting a scene in Bodega Bay, I needed to know what it smelled like, what it looked like, what it felt like, what local people spoke like. I just, there's so much that you get from a field trip like that you just can't get otherwise. But if you can't get someplace, then, and I do this for Vancouver and for others, I'll look at traffic cams to see what the intersection looks like and whether it's hills or flat or buildings in the background. I'll Google Earth the heck out of things if I need to find out, where the railroad tracks are and where the warehouse district kind of is. So I do that kind of research. And a lot of times I'm looking at temperatures, normal temperatures, sunset times, sunrise times. So you're setting the timing correct for the various things that happen, especially if nighttime is important. It's dark, like here in Vancouver or up in this area. In the summertime, it's light at 9:30 at night. So you've got to make sure that you're saying 10 or later if it's going to have to be a scene that's pitch dark outside, right?
Yeah.
So tons of research, and just little things, big things, lots of. But my favorite's the field trip things.
Yeah. Oh, that's like a win-win situation. You get to go explore and you get book ideas. Like you get to have good food. Oh,
yes. Thank goodness for the restaurant.
Oh my gosh, yes. Have you, when you were young, did you know you were going to become an author one day? Was that a dream you had, or did it kind of come as a surprise later in life?
It was not a dream I had, although I must say I grew up in Toronto, and there's lots of snow and slush and ice. And I remember early days, both in school and when I was first working, where I'd be on the bus and it would be, going through the snow. And I used to read on my commute. And I used to think, wouldn't it be nice if I could just do this from home? Like, what jobs can you do from home? I could write if only I had an idea big enough for a book. Meanwhile. So I didn't expect I would become a writer, but there was an opportunity where we'd been doing an awful lot of traveling, my husband and I, with his work. And we'd been away in the South, so Tucson for 3 years and 2 years in Mexico, one in the Baja and one in a little town. Mm-hmm. And it was the first winter we'd been back. And here on the West Coast, it's often called the wet coast because it's rainy and windy and miserable in the winter. Not so much snow, but lots and lots of rain and cold. And it was the first winter we were home, and my husband was watching a hockey game, and I was sitting there thinking, oh my God, how am I going to spend this winter? Because, I can't enjoy the sun like I used to. So I'd been reading a lot of paranormal and urban fantasy. And so I thought, I have this recurring dream of flying. I've had it since I was a kid, and I love those dreams. And so I thought, I wonder if I could write the scene of this woman who goes out to her deck and just leaps off and starts flying. And I wrote that one scene. It took me a couple of nights to get it, so that I really loved it. And I thought, this is just terrific. But how did she know she could jump off the deck and fly? Like, she must have known.
Yeah.
And then, like, what was in her background, and where was she flying to? So that scene became the first book in the series. And I didn't think I'd have an idea big enough. And I realized after I wrote that first scene and the first book popped out, a couple of years later, that you don't have to have the whole book in your head. You just have to have one scene. Yeah. You don't have to be a plotter. You can be a pantster.
Yeah, that is awesome. So how was the transition? Like, what was it like from a pantser to a planner?
It was necessary for my sanity, is all I'll say. When I started the first series, there's 7 books in the first series. And so when I started the first series and I wrote that first book, when I started the second book, I was constantly going back to the first book to say, oh, did I describe what that person looked like? Because I need to make sure that I give a little clue there, right? So I learned to, before I even knew what they were, I started creating this series Bible. I didn't know it was going to be a series, but I got tired of going back and looking and looking and looking. And the same thing happened with writing the story. So I had what the people looked like, what the places, and maps and such of the places. So I had that little book I could reference, but get into the third book and the fourth book. And as I started writing, I was writing myself into corners all the time. Mm-hmm. And that was such a waste of time. I wanted to tell a really interesting story, but I realized that if I didn't start plotting it out, I wasn't going to be able to wrap up all of the storylines that you get when you have a series. So each book has a complete story, but there's also that overarching story for the whole series.
Yeah.
So that's why I ended up becoming a plotter, because I just got lost too many times writing, and I don't like unproductive writing time. I can't stand it when I have to throw out a whole bunch of stuff because it's just not going where I want it to go. So.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm the same way. I started keeping specifically like a list of characters and their traits, their magic, their like where they're from, who they're related to, and like who their significant other is. Like, because I'm like you, I got tired of going back, like, how did I describe it? Especially, it was the super frustration came when I discovered I had described somebody different than I originally wrote them as in a book that I was doing editing on. And I was like, oh, crud. Like, now, how many times did I put this person like this? And like, oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many traps you can get into. I know a lot of people swear by pantsing, and those people are good at doing it that way. Me, I just need a little more structure in my life.
Yeah, and I think honestly, like, there's no like full answer because you're gonna have to do some kind of planning, whether that involves like, researching a certain thing that falls into planning because you have to plan how you're gonna make it look. So yeah, it's cool. Something I like to ask authors, and you kind of mentioned like going for a walk earlier, is what do you do for self-care? Like, how do you keep yourself sane and not get lost in your book world?
Oh, well, when I'm writing a book, I do tend to get lost in my book world. I go to parties and I'm the one that's zoned out because I'm listening to conversations and trying to pick things that I can use in the next book.
I do that too. So
Be careful. Yeah, self-care for me is keeping myself physically fit enough that I continue to write, because writing is my happy place. It makes me happy, it makes me feel fulfilled. I feel like it's my contribution to entertaining the world. So, well, for those people that want to read the books. So for me, keeping healthy is keeping me happy. And so keeping healthy means getting out even when I don't want to. And I used to do a lot of working out, but when COVID hit, I stopped going to the gym because it was just not, well, it was closed for so long. And I haven't gotten back to it, but I have gotten back to, or I've continued to walk. I try to walk every day, and I walk, probably 3 or 4 kilometers a day. So maybe a mile or 2. And it's not a lot, but it keeps me active. And I try not to snack. I don't sit there and fill my face full of chips and chocolates, except at Christmas time, because then I just do.
But like that's just like binge time. Like, just write it off as non like participating diet time. So.
Yeah. Well, and it's all part of that, because it's so easy when you're sitting around all day and your activity level's lower. It's so easy to start putting on weight when you're not doing physical things. So, I do other things too in the summertime. I do get out and garden. I call myself a lapse gardener, but eventually I will get out there and tackle the weeds. And I do, just pruned the fig tree and the fruit trees. They need pruning every year. So we're just in the middle of doing that process. So there are things that I do to get out and get physical, but I haven't been back to the gym. Yeah, I should.
You can also do workouts at home too. There's so much online now that you can follow and do. Not having the equipment could be troublesome, but there's other ways to like do that whole workout routine. Because I ended up switching to that and staying like workout at home after I had my son, just because it was easier to manage. And
I bet, yeah, because otherwise you'd have to get a babysitter or bring him with you, I guess.
Oh yeah, that could I didn't see that going well, taking him to the gym, like strap him to me and be on the treadmill.
Yeah.
So, I want to go back a little bit and talk about your characters. You've got different points of view for each book. Do you have a character that's kind of your favorite, that's like warmed their way into your heart more so than the other?
That's a really tough question. It's like, which of your children are your favorite?
No.
I know. Not that they're my children, but when you create them from scratch, you kind of, I guess I must say my first character is Madilynn Taylor, and she's the one that I guess is closest to my heart. And one of the reasons for that is because she can fly, and oh man, how I would love to fly too. So that kind of makes her my favorite. But the other one that is a sneak favorite, is the secondary character in the Ghostmark, Bloodmark, Scorchmark series. Her name is Sadie, and she's the one that is a prostitute for fun and money on the side.
Yeah.
And she surprised me. I didn't think she would end up being quite that fun, but she actually is, as long as you can get the judgmental part out of your mind and just look at her as a person. I think she's an awful lot of fun. I get that in reviews, actually. I see that in the reviews that people like Sadie.
Yeah, she does sound like a fun character. What are some of the lessons you've picked up over the years having started this author journey?
Lessons about writing?
Yeah, or if maybe any that kind of you could apply to life too, that came from the creative world.
Oh, well, in terms of the writing, one of the things that I learned is not to make your characters perfect, because perfect characters are super boring. They're not fun. So it's fun to do that. The other thing I've learned is to enjoy the research part of it.
Yes.
Because it does seem like a slog at first. It did. I found it a bit of a slog. But when I was looking for the ritual part, the Inca part, that turned into an awful lot of fun. So I do try to keep that in mind. And I try not to get, although I find balance still a challenge, I got to say. I find it a challenge because I get into my head, I get into the books, I don't want to leave them. Yeah. I get so frustrated, like, time to go for your walk. Oh, okay. So that balance I still struggle with and I still strive to do. And that's probably one of the big things I've learned from writing. I gave up a lot to do this full time. Like I don't do the watching TV thing that I used to do. There's no time to waste. Every minute is, 5 minutes. I've learned that. You can do a lot in 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas I used to, 5 minutes. Okay, well, bye. No, now 5 minutes. Oh, I could get another sentence down.
Mm-hmm. Or you could research a little bit more, it's just, or get a couple more words edited. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can look up one more word.
Yes.
Yeah. You can get a lot into, yeah. Have you tried dictation?
I have. I'm not the best with it, though, because when I dictate, I go back and editing it, I'm just going to have to just scratch it and I end up having to rewrite it all because it doesn't pick up my words very well. Now, sometimes if everything's quiet around me, I can get it to pick them up good, but more often than not, it's just easier for me to type it out. A lot of people have had success with it. So
I know. I'm so tempted. I've tried a couple of times, but when I'm writing, I tend to write a sentence and then sometimes I'll write a whole paragraph and then I go back and I do. That's how I write. I know people say you shouldn't, but to my mind, there's no you shouldn't. When you're writing, you do what works for you. And so that works for me. I go back and so when I try to dictate, I don't have the formed complete thought in my head.
Yes. Oh, I do that too. And I'm just I draw a blank and I sit there. I'm like, yep, can't do it. So you just have to see the words in front of you almost to actually finish flowing.
Someone I read somewhere once that they said, you didn't learn to type overnight and you won't learn to dictate overnight, but you can do it if you keep practicing. But I'm impatient, so I haven't yet mastered it. I'm always curious, though, when I hear people who have mastered it, because, man, they can pump out 6,000 to 10,000 words a day.
Yeah, I definitely have not mastered it. It looks kind of crazy when I do try to dictate, and it's just, ugh. I am curious, too, though, what does success look like for you?
Oh, success is when someone enjoys the book. I can't tell you how, well, you're a writer. When someone writes a review or gets in touch with you, or you bump into them at a market or wherever you're selling your books and someone says, or someone's coming to get a second book. They read the first one and they're coming to get the second. And it's just, they make my day because you spend such a lot of time with these characters and in your head and writing, and you gave up a lot to do it. And you're doing it because you want to entertain people or inform, depending on what you're writing. But you want people to read what you've put out. So when they read it and they enjoy it and they come back for more, or they say something nice in a review, that's why I do this.
Yeah, that That's awesome. If you could share a piece of advice to somebody who's just starting their author journey, what kind of advice would you offer them?
I would offer them what I learned when I started writing, and that is don't wait till you have that big idea. You may not have the big idea. Start with a little idea. Like start as a pantser, if that's how you get your, if that's how you get your feet wet. That's how I started, and writing is the most fun I have ever had. I love it. I reward myself with it every day. So do it. Just do it. That's what my advice would be.
When it comes to marketing, do you have any go-tos that work the best for you in this series?
For me right now, marketing, the best thing that I do is, other than these appearances where I'm, making myself available to be interviewed, is through advertising, usually stacked ads through whatever, depending on your genre, which site you might use, Bargain Booksy or Free Booksy or Fussy Librarian or whatever. Those do well. You get bang for the buck with that. The other thing that I've done with this series that I've never done before. Oh, aren't you just the menagerie there?
Hey, Mom, what are you
So cute.
Thanks.
I do. I've been submitting to contests, and I hadn't done that before, and so I'm pleasantly surprised because the series has about 10 awards now. It's a lot of them are honorary mentions and finalists, and then a couple of wins. But that has been a real boost to not only my confidence, but when I'm hand selling books, I've got like the Wishing Shelf Book Awards. You actually get a medal. That's a medal that they send. So, those kinds of things have been very, very good marketing wise. And also the publicist, Mickey Mickelson, that I have with Creative Edge, and big shout out to Mickey Mickelson. He does things for me, like gets me a book cover, Books and Buzz magazine. And that book cover has gotten me a lot of attention as well. So those are the things that I'm doing now that I wasn't doing before. And they've been very, very effective, I've got to say.
Ooh, yes, they definitely come in handy, especially like the bargain sites you mentioned. I try to keep a list of like which ones work the best with me. Kind of like analyzing, hey, I got more clicks from these guys than this guy's, or like it performed better. And yeah. What are some of the outside experiences that have affected your writing and your productivity with getting these books done?
Probably my work experience. I did have a job prior to all of this, and my work was in human resources. And in human resources, one of the things you do is, many things, writing job descriptions. So breaking a job down into its primary or its main areas of responsibility, and that's something you do with characters too. You don't even think you're doing it, but you are as they're doing things. They all do it a slightly different way. So that's part of it. And then motivation in terms of employee retention. If you want to retain employees, you have to motivate them. How are you going to motivate them? And motivation for characters is similar. You have to give them motivation. You also have to be able to, when you're interviewing people for jobs, you kind of have to be able to figure out if the skill set that they come with and the personality and such that they come with will meld well with the people and the job that you're considering them for. So being able to take someone and know that, okay, the job is physically demanding, a warehouse job, physically demanding. So you've got to make sure that the person you're interviewing has the physical capacity to do that job. So it's the same in the character world. If your character is going to be a kick-ass heroine, she better be able to be a kick-ass heroine. So she has to be fit. She doesn't have to be the slim model, but she has to be fit. So those are the things that I did in my real life that I think genuinely helped me in this other life. And the other thing is the observation skills.
Yeah.
I think all writers have that. They just notice the little things.
Yes, I agree. I've been told a couple times, and I didn't know how that people, like the person saying them a few times, meant it, if it was good or bad. But they're like, you're really observant. Like, it just, the way they said it was kind of like, okay, that's kind of creepy. Or is it like okay, you just figured this out? I'm like, yeah, I mean, and it is. It's one of the things I like to do is go sit and people watch, and you pick up like different tendencies or different, almost like personalities and looks and stuff to just put into your little toolkit in your brain.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if, like, because I never get out, but when you're out in the city and you're watching people walk down the street and you see how many different ways there are walking down the street, like the people that have their hunched over, the people that are strutting, the people that are just kind of mousing along, all of those things you bring into your work.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't even realize that they're being like, this stuff is being drawn from just walking past us. It's so cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the
it is.
creative world and our secrets.
We're very lucky.
Yes. And on that note, go ahead and tell our listeners and viewers where they can find you and your books.
My book, everything that you want to know about me, you can find on my website, which is jpmcleanauthor.com. So you can find everything there. And I have, this week, I will be putting my books, the first series, the Secret Sky Gift Legacy series, they're going to be going into Kindle Unlimited for the very first time. So I'm going to be doing some advertising around that, and I'll be ticking that little box off. I've just taken them off everywhere else. So they'll be exclusive to Amazon for the next 3 months at least. And hopefully we'll see what happens with all those people that might want to read them there.
Yes. Awesome. I wish you good luck with Kindle Unlimited. And Joanne, thank you so much for being on the Chapter Goddess today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to see you again.
Yes. I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to get future notifications when shows come out. Also, be sure to check out my website. I have a blog featuring this creative with some other fun and interesting questions. You can also subscribe to my newsletter there to stay up to date with all things the Chapter Goddess and Madilynn Dale. Once again, thanks for watching and have a great rest of the day.